What's going on, guys? Welcome in. Farzin Vasugian here with you on a Monday. The Chiefs Zone podcast is back. Hope you all had a great weekend. Hope you all enjoyed the weekend free of Chiefs football. A lot of good football action over the weekend. And none of it really matters to the Kansas City Chiefs, though, because they have the number 1 seed locked up, and they're going to be facing a Denver Broncos team fighting to go into the playoffs. But the Chiefs, like I said, don't have anything to fight for. So will we see the backups? A lot of national reports indicate that the Chiefs will put in some of their backups. The key starters are not expected to play. And that's how it was worded. But Andy Reid did not commit to giving an answer to that specific question, at least not today. We'll talk about that. Andy Reid was also asked about some of the injuries on the team and whether or not some players will be available for the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. You'll definitely want to know who Andy Reid said could be available and could not be available. Some of the guys that you've been asking about for a couple of weeks now. So we'll get into that and more here on this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. Again, hope you're all having a great Monday. For those of you who went back to work, props to you guys. For those of you who still continue to work, even on the holidays, props to you guys. I have been there before. Not the most fun experience to work on holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas. Having worked in sports media, I know what that's like. I mean, listen, there could be more grueling jobs, especially on a holiday. But I've been there before. It is not the most thrilling and props to listen. I enjoy listening to sports talk radio, national sports talk radio specifically, and I always like hearing the fill-in guys because those are guys always. It's almost like a training camp where you know there's someone who's on the roster bubble, so you know they're going to work their ass off. That's kind of how national sports talk radio is for those guys who are filling in. They want to put in their best effort because that's essentially their audition, their preseason. If any sports directors like what they hear from them, then they get promoted and eventually get to do national sports talk radio full time. So that stuff is always fun to listen to, in my opinion. Yeah, I see a lot of you guys giving some shout outs to Carson Wentz. Bob saying Wentz going to start. Vicky says Wentz going to kick some ass. Robert says Wentz W coming up. If the Chiefs lose against Denver, isn't Cincinnati out? John's asking. Yes. So now here's a weird part about all of this. Cincinnati, actually the entire AFC North, will play on Saturday. The Chiefs have been flexed on Saturday a couple of times ever since they've had this new Week 18 format. But it's so interesting. I love the narrative around, the Chiefs obviously have nothing to play for. So like any smart head coach, and listen, I know Andy Reid has not committed to giving an answer as to what he's going to do, but let's not be stupid here. We all know that they're resting the starters. I mean, come on. Why are you risking injury, especially on an injury-riddled season this season? You just don't want to do that. I mean, come on. There's no reason to put your starters out there, because I've seen a few Chiefs fans say, well, why don't we, keep the Broncos out of the play? Andy Reid couldn't give a rat's ass what any of the 31 other teams need or don't need in Week 18, especially when he has his situation in lock. I mean, the Chiefs they were locked into the number 5 seed in 2013. The Chargers needed to make the playoffs, but at the end of the day, didn't really matter. The Chiefs almost won that football game, by the way. It was an overtime. So Cincinnati is in this peril position, basically on their knees, begging for Andy Reid to. It's funny. I got a comment from a Bengals fan, obviously being facetious and has a sense of humor about the whole thing. Screenshotted his status post and commented on my page, apologizing for all the bad things he ever said about Mahomes and Travis Kelce's girlfriend, and saying Burrow had all. I'm like, okay, that's funny. I can laugh at that. But for all the Bengals fans who are like, oh, the Chiefs are scared of the Bengals. Why would the Chiefs be afraid of the Bengals? Like, let's use our brains here. This is not mental gymnastics here. Okay. If you watch football and have even the slightest bit of football knowledge and have half of a brain, why would the Chiefs be afraid of anybody, especially when the goal realistically is to go win a Super Bowl and three-peat? You have to essentially be ready to play anyone and everyone. So why would you be afraid of the Bengals of all teams? I know Cincinnati still lives in 2022, that they beat the Chiefs 3 times. And it's like, first off, like, why would you be afraid of a football team that took 17 weeks to finally beat a team with a winning record? Seriously, why would anyone be afraid of a football team that took that long to finally get a... The Bengals are last year's Miami Dolphins team. Great team, can put up some great stats, but can't beat a team with a winning record. I mean, come on. Like, let's use our brains here. And by the way, if I get this question, I know I'm going to get this question during the playoffs. Oh, who would you rather play in the AFC Championship? Who's easier? I love this question. Who is quote unquote easier to play in the excuse me, in the AFC Championship game or in the Super Bowl? There is no easy team in the Super Bowl or AFC I mean, listen, there's no easy team in the playoffs. I guess in the first round there might be some ideal matchups, but there's no easy team in the playoffs. Like, come on. That's always been another one that I've always chuckled at. Look, last year, weren't the Chiefs the easy team in the playoffs? Weren't they? Oh, Mahomes has never played a road game before. Remember that narrative? And the Chiefs just took a big dump on that one. Yeah, the Chiefs were the easy team last year. In fact, I think they were the betting underdogs in every game except for the wild card game in the playoffs last year. You know who else was the easy team to play? The New York Giants, the 2 times they beat the Patriots in the playoffs. You know who else was the easy team to play in the playoffs? When Nick Foles led the Eagles in the playoffs because Carson Wentz kept getting hurt. And what happened? One year they won the Super Bowl. The other year, I think they beat the Saints in the playoffs. So there's no easy team in the playoffs. But here's what I will say about this whole, Cincinnati fans being angry that Kansas City is going to put in their backups as if Kansas City needs to prioritize the Bengals, which I think is hilarious. Here's an idea. Don't do this with the game on the line, and you would have won this football game. Here's an idea. Don't screw up and all of the other screw ups you've had earlier this year. The fumbled snap against the Ravens, not being able to finish the game the other time you played the Ravens, choking to the Patriots in week 1. I mean, I keep hearing from Bengals fans, oh, if our one possession games went the other way, we would win more games. Yeah, well, then finish those football games. But yeah, they just want to bitch and moan about officiating because that's what Bengals fans do. So have fun with that, Cincinnati fans. Have fun with that. I just think it's like, come on. Here's the ironic part about all of this. Bengals fans think Chiefs fans are obsessed with the Bengals. It's not necessarily obsessed. It's just fun to throw digs at them. But now, here they are talking about the Chiefs. The Burrowhead, they still love to throw that term out there, even though Burrow's 1-2 at Arrowhead. And now you need Kansas City to win. So, and because they're not using their starters, they're mad about it. So that's see, Robert says, win your games, quit begging. This is what happened. Remember what division was it? The NFC East. Didn't the Commanders win that division with 6 games or 7 games? And I think it was the Giants. They needed the Eagles to win in week 17 or 18. I can't remember exactly. I think it was week 18 by that time. No, it was the pandemic now that I think about it. So I don't think it was. We had a week 18. Anyway, I digress. It was the last game of the season. The Eagles already had backups on the field, and then Doug Peterson took out some of the second stringers and put in third stringers, and Giants players were complaining on Twitter. The winner of that division had 6 wins. maybe do something to win more than 6 games, and you would have been in the playoffs way before week 18 or 17, whatever it was at the time. So, I mean, Cincinnati, you have no one to blame but yourselves on that one. All those times they wanted to bag on the Chiefs and watch the Chiefs very closely in hopes that they would lose. Well, now karma's biting you in the ass. So have fun with that one. All right, let's get into the Chiefs here. Andy Reid did a press conference today talking about this Week 18 game, which Bengals fans care a lot more about than Kansas City fans. I suppose there are some people who care about this game from the Chiefs side of things. I certainly do care because there are some players that I am very curious to see, and I'll get into some of those players later on in the podcast. But as far as Andy Reid did say that, well, actually what he didn't say, he said that he's not going to commit to saying who's going to start and who's not because he has not had a chance to address the team. I guess the Chiefs they have today off and they're coming tomorrow, which is unusual because usually it's a Tuesday where they're off if they have a Sunday game. I guess they're allowed to swap the days if they want to. Not exactly sure how that works, but I suppose tomorrow is not going to be a practice day. I'm sure it's going to be maybe film study or just a walkthrough type of day, but nothing too strenuous on the players. The real practice starts Wednesday for sure, I would imagine. But Andy Reid said he didn't want to announce anything because he had yet to address the team when he did his press conference today, which is certainly fair enough. But let's not be stupid here. We all know that Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, they're not playing. Isaiah Pacheco. In fact, let's get into it right now. Andy Reid was asked specifically about some of the players who have been recently dealing with injuries. So guys like DJ Humphries, Isaiah Pacheco, Mecole Hardman, who's on IR right now, Jalen Watson, who's also on IR, and Rashee Rice also on IR. Let me just say this. I'll just get it out of the way right now. Rice is unfortunately not coming back. Jalen Watson, Andy Reid said he potentially has a chance, but then even added that it would be a little bit of a stretch for Jalen Watson to come back. I know Jalen Watson uploaded a video of him running inside the Arrowhead practice facility. Let me just say this real quickly. I know when a player is recovering from injury and when they upload a video of themselves working out, fans get excited. Oh, they look great in the gym. Well, yeah, of course they look great in the gym. They're professional athletes. Let's use a torn ACL, for example. Listen, I went through a torn ACL and I'm not a professional athlete. What a professional athlete goes through in recovery is not the same as an average person. Those rehab programs are designed for like the laziest person in the world. I'm not saying they heal faster, but they certainly their pain tolerance is certainly much bigger than the average person. I'm not. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that's a bad thing that Jalen Watson was out there jogging. That's great that he's out there getting some work in. Hopefully he comes back strong next year. Andy Reid just made it clear he's unlikely to come back this year. Another name he was asked about was DJ Humphries. Didn't really give much about DJ Humphries other than his rehab is going well, and that was it. That is the only detail he gave on that. He said Mecole Hardman should be available for the playoffs. That was encouraging to hear because with his speed and everyone else that you have on the field right now, look, I've said this many times about Mecole Hardman. I love the skill set Mecole Hardman possesses, but we just haven't seen Mecole Hardman ever since his second year in the NFL really utilize all of that. I know he came through big in the Super Bowl with the catch, but even way before that, he had that nice reception where he just torched two defenders, 49ers defenders, and had that big grab there. And I just wonder, like, in Andy Reid's system, why haven't we seen more of that from Mecole Hardman? I don't know. Maybe with Hollywood Brown back, that just opens things up more if the Chiefs have like a 5-wide set, and that'll allow Mecole to get more involved or more open. I don't know. The other name, the biggest name that I think a lot of people are curious to hear about the most was Isaiah Pacheco. Andy Reid did not say much about Pacheco's situation, but he did say that Pacheco should be available for the playoffs. That is all he gave. again, the other thing he said about Pacheco is he is considering holding him out of practice this week. So I think it's almost certain that Pacheco will not play on Sunday against the Broncos. So that is the injury update. And for a lot of the names people have been wondering about, DJ Humphries, Rashee Rice, Jalen Watson, and then Mecole Hardman and Isaiah Pacheco. Watson and Rice, I mean, their seasons, unfortunately, are probably done. Humphries has a chance to come back, it sounds like, but Mecole Hardman and Isaiah Pacheco, they are expected to be available in the divisional round of the playoffs, according to Andy Reid. So for those of you wondering, I know a lot of you guys have been asking me this, that is the situation. Luke is asking me about the 2025 schedule, home and away. Yeah, that is actually almost complete. I'll actually tell you guys right now if you guys want to know. We're still waiting on the winner of the AFC North. That has not been determined yet. That is going to be determined Sunday night. But we do know a lot of things in terms of the Chiefs' opponents. In fact, we know everything except for two games. Away games, obviously the AFC West. Then you have the Jaguars, the Titans, the Bills, Cowboys, and the Giants. For home games, you got the AFC West. Then you have the Texans, the Colts, the Eagles, and the Commanders. The two opponents we do not know yet. We don't know who's going to win the AFC North yet. It's either going to be the Steelers or the Ravens. I think it's going to be the Ravens. And then you have the AFC North, or I'm sorry, the NFC North. That one is more unpredictable at the moment, especially with the way Minnesota's playing. It's going to be either Minnesota or Detroit. So whoever wins Sunday Night Football, that is the last opponent that'll be on Kansas City's schedule. We obviously won't know the schedule until May, but we will know the opponents. We know all of them except for two. That is what we have right now. So the Chiefs are going to have 9 home games and 7 away games. Or I'm sorry, 8 away games. Now, I will say this. I know I mentioned all the home teams. We do not know if Kansas City is going to host a playoff or host a game in Germany. I know Clark Hunt is pushing for that. But it's not certain. I know a lot of expectations were that the Chiefs were going to go back to Germany this season, but that never happened. So we'll see if Kansas City will make a push to go back to Germany this year. I do know the Chiefs love that market. Absolutely. Love putting their name out there in that country. So it would not surprise me if one of those home games were taken away to play in Munich. Or Frankfurt, one of those two locations. So, yeah, Eric says Toney has stepped up big at left tackle. Here's a question I have for you guys. Let's say DJ Humphries is 100% healthy and ready to go. What do you do at left tackle? Do you put Joe Toney, let him stay there? Or do you put Joe Toney back to left guard, let Mike Caliendo go back to being a backup, and let DJ Humphries start at left tackle? Because what Joe Toney is doing right now is, I mean, he's playing really well at left tackle. He really is. And how did that saying go? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I kind of struggle with this one. And Andy Reid was asked about this today, and he said he's going to play by ear. I mean, listen, he's obviously not going to reveal that right now. There's just no way. I think part of it is they really want to see how DJ Humphries is doing. Here's my prediction. I think if DJ Humphries is 100% clear, ready to go, I think they will put DJ Humphries back at left tackle and they'll put Joe Toney back at guard. But if Patrick Mahomes is struggling to get the football out and there are issues at that left tackle spot, then you go back to Toney at left tackle, Caliendo at left guard. Because I do think that, first off, let me start off with Joe Toney here. I think he's done a tremendous job at left tackle. And those are some defensive fronts. I mean, they're no joke. He went up against Myles Garrett in that Cleveland game. I mean, that was not easy. I know he struggled more in the second half, but I thought he did really well against Myles Garrett in general. Against the Texans, and by the way, a very good defensive football team. I know offensively they have not played well lately. especially with Tank Dell's very unfortunate injury that happened at Arrowhead. Houston could be a one-and-done football team, but Joe Thuney looked really good against Will Anderson. At the time, Will Anderson was 7th in sacks with 10.5. The guy opposite of him, Danielle Hunter, had 12 sacks and was 2nd in the NFL at the time, and he was going up against Jawaan Taylor. And then the Steelers, TJ Watt was going up mostly against Jawaan Taylor, and surprisingly, Taylor actually did well for most of that game. But still, that Steelers defensive front is very good. I like the Steelers defense in general. I think they're a very good football team defensively. So Joe Thuney, in his 3 starts at left tackle, I mean, he passed. He certainly did. And we got to give credit to Mike Caliendo. I saw Pro Football Focus, and listen, I like Pro Football Focus. I think it's a good website. I'm not a big fan of their grades. I like the stats they put out there that you can't find anywhere else, but the grades are a little weird sometimes. They gave Caliendo, and this is off the top of my head, they gave him like a 19.4 pass blocking grade. I don't necessarily agree with that. He did allow 3 pressures in that football game. I don't think that constitutes giving him that low of a grade. I think Mike Caliendo has done a really good job at left guard. I really do. And by the way, I talked about this upcoming game, and I know there's not a lot to get into. We'll get into that more this Sunday's game. We'll do it in our breakdown. Yes, we will still do a breakdown podcast. We'll still do it the same way as we have with any other game. Obviously, it'll be a lot different because we'll talk about a lot of these players that we might not be familiar with. But I'm looking at Mike Caliendo, and I think he's done a really good job at left guard. This is a guy who was undrafted a couple of years ago and never started a football game until that Cleveland Browns football game, where the Chiefs, by the way, played 3 games in the span of 11 days and won all of them. And I think Mike Caliendo has done a very good job during that stretch. And I'm just looking at Mike Caliendo, and I'm kind of thinking, is this a guy that maybe you can use long-term for your offensive line? Because I've said this before. If you're going to have Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, obviously the standard every year is going to be Super Bowl or bust. And in order to be able to reach the Super Bowl, you got to have a strong offensive line. And I think Mike Caliendo is a guy that you got to consider long-term. I talked about this upcoming football game against the Broncos. There are 2 guys I'm very curious to see how they play against a Broncos team that is number 1 in sacks. They just got 7 sacks on Joe Burrow. I know Cincinnati's offensive line is not very good, but 7 sacks that is still a lot. I mean, think about Derek Thomas. He had 7 sacks in 1 game. Obviously that's the single game NFL record. 7 sacks as a team is still insanely, ridiculously high. So I'm very curious how Hunter Norzad and CJ Hansen are going to look. Those are 2 rookies the Chiefs drafted in day 3 of this year's draft. In fact, the Chiefs drafted 3 offensive linemen. They drafted Kingsley Suamataia. I'll get into him shortly. Unfortunately, it's been a very bad season for him. Then they drafted Hunter Norzad out of, what was the school he went to? Holy Cross. That's where it was. And then they got CJ Hansen. Or do I have that mixed up? Did CJ Hansen go to... No, CJ Hansen went to Holy Cross. My apologies. Hunter Norzad. Where did Hunter Norzad go? He went to Penn State. That is where he went. Okay, so I got those 2 mixed up. Apologies. But neither here nor there. The point is, I think this is going to be a game where Kingsley Suamataia, Hunter Norzad, and CJ Hansen, 3 rookies who you drafted, are going to get a lot of playing time. I'm curious to know what Kingsley Suamataia is going to look like. I really would love to see what Norzad and Hansen, what they can bring to the table with this opportunity for those 2 guys. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think CJ Hansen has been inactive for every single game this year. He's for sure going to play in Trey Smith's spot. And I just mentioned Trey Smith. That is someone who is set to be a free agent after this season. And hopefully it's after Super Bowl 59. That is going to be a big loss at right guard, because the guard market went way up in the past year and a half. The Chiefs found a way to lock up Creed Humphrey to a long-term deal Trey Smith was someone who they tried to lock up before the season, were unsuccessful in doing so. You could put the franchise tag on him. I know for sure the Chiefs are going to do something with Jawaan Taylor. I don't think Jawaan Taylor is coming back. They're going to try to do something to get out of that contract. I would almost imagine. But I just feel like the guys that you drafted in on the offensive line this year, 3 of them, you got to see what you have to work with long term. Because if you do have a diamond in the rough in Hansen or Nourzad, this would be a good opportunity to see what you can do with those guys and see what they look like against a very good Broncos defensive unit and see if these are guys worth keeping around long term. So those are the 3 guys I'm most curious to see. I know they also have Ethan Driscoll, an undrafted free agent, who's also on the roster. He was the backup right tackle for a majority of the year. Excuse me. And I think Driscoll is someone that I'd be a little curious to see as well. I'm more curious about the other guys, though, I mentioned, Nourzad, Hansen, and Suamataia. So I'm very interested to see how that goes. James says Taylor cost us like 20 yards a game, and the average sounds about right. Does anyone have that average? I mean, I'm sure it's out there somewhere, and I'd be willing to look that up. Just can't do it right this moment. But yeah, I don't. This is the thing. I remember Jawaan Taylor committed a penalty. I think it was an illegal block in the back last year on Rashee Rice's touchdown. Now, thankfully, it was during a blowout win over the Dolphins. At the time, it was not a blowout. But it's just, man, he's done things like that. And I can't remember if it was, I think it was against Steelers. Yeah, on Christmas Day, where Mahomes got the ball to Travis Kelce on 4th and 1 on a great play, on a great catch and run play there by Travis Kelce. But it came back because of the penalty on Jawaan Taylor, and Andy Reid decided to take the offense off the field and put the punting unit out there. And it's just, you can't make that mistake. You can't do that. You got to be way better than that. And I think it's at a point now with Jawaan Taylor. It's like, okay, we're 2 years into this Jawaan Taylor experiment. I don't know if this is going to work long term. In fact, that's something that concerns me. I think Taylor did a good job in terms of pass blocking against TJ Watt. But gosh, man, the penalties have just been an issue all year long. For 2 years, really. Still struggling, lining up. I mean, we haven't seen that for a couple of games, but it's really hurt Kansas City. So I'd like to see them move on from Taylor after this year. Wanya Morris actually did not look terrible at right tackle in that Texans game. He wasn't challenged much, and it was the 4th quarter, but I would love it if Wanya Morris was, on deck, ready. In case Taylor has a really bad game in the playoffs. I mean, they did it with in that Raiders game. They shifted Tooney to left tackle and took Morris out of left tackle. Maybe Morris is better as a right tackle. I don't know. Certainly something to maybe you can experiment with that this weekend against the Broncos. That's not a bad thing to do. I'd like to see that for sure. What do I think of Terry Bradshaw saying that the Chiefs will not three-peat? Okay, I don't have the audio for this, but I will. I'll repeat what he said word for word, because this is all-timer analysis here, folks. So during the NFL on Fox pregame show Sunday, Terry Bradshaw said the Chiefs are not going to win 3 in a row. And he had 2 reasons for this. One is it's never happened before. Such original reasoning there, as if like we haven't heard that already, even before the season. Now they're 15-1 with the number 1 seed, and it still never happened. Okay, well, okay. Listen, let me just say this. I understand these people know football way more than I ever will because they literally played the sport. But none of that really matters if your analysis is it's never happened before. As if I haven't heard that from anyone else already within the last, 300-ish days, ever since Super Bowl 58, essentially. But the second reason he gave, and this is the quote he gave, They're not going to win 3 in a row. It's never been done. The other reason is I just think that, did you see how quick they get rid of the ball now? See how quick. I just think if they, that's how we said it. I just think if they load up again at a team like Buffalo, they load up against a team like Baltimore, those are the two teams that can beat them. I think it's going to happen. One of them is going to do it, even though the game would be in Kansas City. So essentially his second reason is the Chiefs are not going to win because they get rid of the ball more quick recently. Because we're not just going to give Joe Thuney credit, and we're not going to talk about how Mahomes got another weapon back in Hollywood Brown. All-timer analysis there. Like I said, that is certainly the analysis that everyone wakes up for on a Sunday morning to catch these pregame guys for sure. Look, here's the thing about Kansas City, and I know Patriots fans don't like this, but there are former Patriots players like Tom Brady. I'm sure you guys have heard of him, like Gronk, like Julian Edelman, guys who are in the media and who are a very key part of the Patriots dynasty. Those guys keep saying that Kansas City is going to do it and that it's going to happen. Those guys know what it takes. And the thing about the Patriots, and I said Patriots fans are not going to like this comparison. The Chiefs are very similar to the Patriots right now. I'm not talking about because of the dynasty. I'm talking about the fact that people keep writing off the Chiefs, and I get it. People are tired of the Chiefs outside of Kansas City. So if you're an analyst and you have an opinion that basically is saying that the Chiefs are not going to win the Super Bowl, people like to hear that. I get that. But the Patriots were the same way. If any analyst could give a glimmer of hope to everyone outside of New England that the Patriots were not going to win the Super Bowl, people lived for that analysis. I get that. I 100% get that. But I still remember when the Patriots were down. Remember 2014, coincidentally, was Kansas City when the Chiefs broke the record for loudest stadium in the NFL on the same night. They beat the living hell out of the Patriots in that football game. Remember that in 2014, Monday Night Football? And look, it wasn't just people outside of New England. I remember working for local sports talk radio there, and we were listening to WEEI in Boston. We flipped on their station for a moment, or played highlights. I can't remember which one it was, but they were torching Brady and Belichick. They basically wrote off Brady. They wrote off their own guys, their own media, their own fans. And what happened? They won the Super Bowl that year. I still remember 2017. The Chiefs go to Foxborough. They destroyed the Patriots again. Remember that? Kareem Hunt's NFL debut. The Chiefs outscoring the Patriots 21-0 at Gillette Stadium. And the Patriots started 2-2 that year. Patriots fans and everyone outside of New England wrote off the Patriots again. And then what happened? The same year, once again, despite being written off, the Patriots go and win the Super Bowl. So people want to keep writing off Kansas City. This is exactly what happened with the Patriots. They were written off so many times, even by their own fans and media, and they still found a way to come through and win the Super Bowl. Last year, let's go to 2 years ago, because I still think this topic gets brought up, but in a different angle now, the Tyreek Hill trade. The Chiefs, I mean, have they struggled without Tyreek Hill? They haven't had a clear-cut number one all-pro wide receiver, especially last year with the drops. But 2022, you thought they were going to struggle without Tyreek Hill, and the narrative turned into, they're here without Tyreek Hill. Last year, even though the Chiefs won the Super Bowl the year before, last year turned into, they should have probably paid Tyreek Hill. And then that narrative went away real quickly when the Chiefs got into the playoffs and kept winning a game each week in the playoffs and eventually became Super Bowl champions. Because I think winning Super Bowl 58 and winning back-to-back years without Tyreek Hill, that officially allowed people to seal the trade and say that Kansas City won it by a very wide margin. And now, again, without Tyreek Hill, the Chiefs are 15-1, maybe 16-1, maybe 15-2. Only what 8 or 9 teams have finished a season with 15 wins. So obviously you're already in a very rare club. But Kansas City's just keep finding a way, man. Because what was the narrative 2 years ago? Oh, they don't have Tyreek Hill. How the hell are they going to survive? Well, they won the Super Bowl. Oh, last year everyone's dropping passes. What are they going to still won the Super Bowl? What was it this year? Oh, all these close games. It just takes one moment. Well, the Chiefs had close games last year in the playoffs too, and they were all like survival type of games. L'Jarius Sneed popping that football out of Zay Flowers' hands. The Tyler Bass missed field goal, even though McCole Hardman also fumbled at the 1 yard line. Overtime against the 49ers. I mean, the Chiefs have had close games already before coming into this season. I get it. I mean, the Chiefs are winning in some of the weirdest ways ever. The doink, the blocked field goal, the pass interference, the toe. The toe was certainly unique. I don't think that has ever happened on the final play of a game ever. But they're winning games. And now, when you look at this Chiefs football team, the past 2 games, they went up against 2 really good defenses. And they played their best football offensively. I told you guys right after the game against the Texans, that was Kansas City's best game of the year. And I think they followed it up with a much better game after they beat the Steelers to clinch a number 1 seed. So the way I look at it here, Kansas City, you want to talk about close games with Kansas City and how they're not blowing out teams? Okay, fine. The way I see it, Kansas City just blew out 2. Okay, they didn't blow out the Texans, but it was fairly one-sided. You never thought, even when the Texans led briefly, you never thought the Chiefs were in danger of losing that football game. The Steelers, Chiefs got off to a hot start, and they never looked back in that football game. The Steelers just never gave you anything to make you feel like they were coming back. In fact, I saw all of the responses from Steelers fans online. They all felt like that was the worst game of the year for the Steelers. And there was some concern from Steelers fans about how their football team looks going into the playoffs. Now, look at the NFL standings right now. The Chiefs are at plus 97. And what do they rank when it comes to point differential? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're 8th in that category. Now, I know Detroit has yet to play, but they're already number 1 in that category anyway, which, by the way, that I don't know why Detroit would even use any starters today, considering how irrelevant today's game is for them, win or lose. If you're 15-1, being 8th in the point differential may not add up from a football standpoint, but that's just the way Kansas City won their football games this year. And now, in these last couple of games against the Browns, who I know are not a very good football team, but they have a great defense, the Chiefs found a way to overcome that. They found a way to beat a Texans football team that was top 5 in sacks and takeaways. Or let me correction there. They have top 5 edge rushers in terms of sacks, and they're top 5 in takeaways. The Steelers were number 1 in the NFL in takeaways, and they couldn't get a single takeaway off Kansas City. So when I look at this Chiefs team, they've played their best football these last 2 weeks. They're playing much better right now. Because again, what was the worldwide universal opinion on the Chiefs? Oh, they're escaping and barely surviving these close games. Where's that narrative right now? It's kind of gone, because the Chiefs recently against maybe they see one of these teams in the playoffs, maybe not, but these are 2 playoff teams they just beat. Okay, one of them was an 8-point game. That's still a 1-score game, but the Chiefs had the football in the end, and they just chewed up the clock. The Texans were never in any situation where they were threatening to steal a win at Arrowhead. And the Chiefs go into Pittsburgh, no problem. And by the way, and I know the Chiefs were not the only team to go through this, but the Chiefs just did this 3 times in the span of 11 days. So I'm just looking at this Chiefs team right now. I don't have a lot of concerns. I think the offensive line is looking good right now. They might leave Joe Thuney where he's at because, again, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Maybe you consider a new option at right tackle. I don't know. Maybe Wanya Morris, or I'll even throw this scenario out there. I don't think it happens. But if Jawan Taylor has a really bad divisional round game, maybe DJ Humphries comes in at right tackle. I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility. I don't think it happens. Sure as hell could not be much worse than Taylor, though I do think Taylor's played better recently ever since this offensive line shift. Because if you can improve the left tackle spot, I think Mahomes can mask some of the issues at right tackle, and he kind of has in a way. And still, I think Taylor deserves credit for how he's played recently. But I do think the Chiefs offensively are just playing better football, way better football. Kareem Hunt's not putting up the big numbers. He doesn't need to. He's giving you the boost you need, especially in short yardage situations. They used Isaiah Pacheco on that 3rd and short and then a 4th and short play, 2 plays in a row. That was bad. That was certainly bad. But they managed to come through in that game. Later on, they got another opportunity on 3rd and short, and what do? They changed the running back. They used Kareem Hunt. And I think the Chiefs have learned who to use in short yardage situations. By the way, we haven't seen this guy. He's getting snaps. He's on the field, but we're not seeing this guy touch the ball. I'm very curious if Carson Steele gets involved in the playoffs in short yardage situations. I'd be very curious to see if Carson Steele is someone that gets involved a little, because he was involved, I wouldn't say a lot, but for, a guy who's a fullback, and I know the Chiefs don't use that position a lot, even now with Carson Steele on the team. They used him more earlier in the season compared to more recently. Then you have Samaje Perine. He has gotten much more involved recently, especially in the passing game, getting those big catch and run plays. Very, very similar to Jerick McKinnon. The big difference between McKinnon and Perine is that Perine is about 15 to 20 pounds bigger. So he's physically bigger and stronger than McKinnon, but very similar skill set. And then Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, 2 very reliable tight ends. And you just have wide receivers who, is there a better set of wide receivers right now? You have DeAndre Hopkins, who I think has a good grasp of the offensive playbook now. You have Hollywood Brown, who had all this hype coming into the season. And now that he's back from injury, he's gotten involved pretty quickly with Patrick Mahomes. Xavier Worthy is getting better and better each and every single week. His stats keep going up every single game in terms of receptions. He's gotten far more involved lately. Justin Watson, it feels like he's getting targeted more recently for the Chiefs. I like what Kansas City has on offense, and they're clicking at the right time. What was the narrative last year about the Chiefs? There were a few people out there, guys like Pat McAfee, Colin Cowherd, Rich Eisen. They were one of some of the very, very, very few people nationally that actually had hope for the Chiefs. Maybe they did not pencil them in as a Super Bowl winner before the playoffs, but I remember hearing those 3 guys say all Kansas City has to do is flip the switch, and they did exactly that. I know this year's offensive woes are not as bad as last year's with the drops, and I think the record certainly is a reflection of that, but I'm just looking at the Chiefs right now. They flipped the switch in terms of utilizing their weapons more, getting more yardage, not having Patrick run for his life, and maybe even scoring a little bit more. No, you have not scored more than 30 points in a game. I know that's a huge deal, but they just blew out a really good Steelers football team, especially when it comes to the defensive side of things. Timothy commented and said, best wide receiver set in the league, no more double teams. That is the most important thing here. I mean, listen, I don't know. Like, think of a different combination of formations you could go with. If you have 4 wide receivers on the field, and those 4 are Worthy, Hopkins, Hollywood, and Watson, and you have Travis Kelce as your tight end there, you can't double team all those guys. You just can't. And then, let's switch things up a little bit. Let's say they have a running back, whether it's Pacheco, Pirine, Hunt. I'll even throw Carson Steele in there. And then you have 3 wide receivers and a tight end. All these different packages here, whether it's a 12 personnel, 13, 14 personnel, all these different packages you can go with. A different combination of everything. Kansas City just has all the weapons here. The only thing you just got to hope for is that the injury bug is behind them. That is the one thing you're just hoping for. By the way, I just realized this, because it was not brought up in Andy Reid's press conference, unless I completely missed it. There was no talk about Chris Jones in the press conference, though I will say this. The speculation from the local media was that if the Chiefs had a full week to prepare for the Steelers, then Chris Jones probably would have played that game. But I just realized Chris Jones was not brought up in any stretch. So, yeah, there's a sports talk station in Denver that had Ian Rappaport on, and Rappaport basically said that Mahomes, Kelce, Jones, and a lot of Chief starters won't play, which makes a lot of sense. And I think not playing this Week 18 game and having that bye week in the postseason, I just think that really bodes well for Kansas City. I mean, I think that's the most important thing here. If the Chiefs did not get that number 1 seed, then I'd be a little concerned, because I think Kansas City needs that right now. That they absolutely had to get that, especially with their bye week being so early and having all these injuries on offense. That, I think, is going to be the biggest X factor for Kansas City, is that rest. Because remember last year, all the starters sat out except for Chris Jones because he had a sack incentive for his salary. I think that helped Travis Kelce a lot in the playoffs. Don't you guys? Kelce went off in the playoffs. He had a very quiet first half against the 49ers in the Super Bowl. But outside of that, Kelce had a great postseason. The 2 touchdowns against the Bills, 100+ yards and a touchdown against the 49ers, 90-some yards against the 49ers. Like, he went off in the playoffs last year. And keep in mind, that was Kansas City playing 4 playoff games because they had to play in the wild card round. So that was not easy. And I think that Week 18 game where you were locked into the number 3 seed, that allowed you to rest your starters. And that translated into success in the playoffs. The offensive woes still didn't go away. You still had some drops. You still had some ball security problems, but it wasn't as bad as it was during the regular season. I just think ultimately, Kansas City offensively is far better prepared. They're going to be much better rested, and they're just better equipped than any offense in the NFL. I would say maybe Detroit's defense could stand up to him. That was before all the injuries, though. I mean, Detroit, the injuries they're dealing with on the defensive side is very similar to what Kansas City's been dealing with on the offensive side. But fortunately for Kansas City, they got everyone back except for Rashee Rice. And they let Clyde Edwards-Helaire go. Outside of that, you got everyone back. You're still waiting on DJ Humphries. You know, you kind of wonder, can he be a difference maker? If so, that would be a big bonus. But I think the way you are right now with Toney at left tackle and Caliendo at left guard, Kansas City is in a very good spot. I just don't have a lot of concerns, really. Yeah, Deb says, and we have the best coach. That's a good point. I will say this. I think my only concern is the play calling. Andy Reid's a great head coach, no question about it. But I do think the play calling, that has been a concern in the past and hopefully that's going to be better. Because my biggest gripe with Kansas City in last year's postseason was that second half against Baltimore. It was a very low-scoring game. Kansas City won 17-10, but they did not do much offensively in the second half. And Baltimore imploded. The four personal foul penalties, and then Zay Flowers fumbling into the end zone, which again, one of the most clutch plays in Chiefs history there with Snead. But if that's a team that didn't hurt themselves, what kind of an outcome would we have seen in that one? I know woulda, coulda, shoulda, but I just want Kansas City to not have a game like that where they go silent the entire second half. Because I don't know if you're going to get that this time. Because, look, I get it. All of these 14 teams in the playoffs right now, they all want to win a Super Bowl. No one's going to be okay with not winning it. But I guarantee you, if a team like, let's just say the Broncos, let's say the Broncos get the 7 seed. If they don't win the Super Bowl, but if they were to come to Arrowhead and put a stop to Kansas City's quest to three-peat, that theoretically is their Super Bowl, especially with a rookie quarterback. So my point is you're going to get every team's best shot, 100%. So hopefully that is a situation where the Chiefs will be better prepared in terms of the play calling. I just think offensively you have way better players this year than you did last year, to where what happened in the second half last year against Baltimore does not happen again. That's just how I feel about it. All right, guys, we have the NFL playoffs coming up very soon. We still have college bowl games going on, the NBA, NHL, college basketball, all in full swing. And if you guys want to get tickets and check out any of the sports action, go to SeatGeek.com. That is where I go to for all of my sports ticketing needs. If you've never purchased from SeatGeek before, I got a nice little late Christmas gift for you guys. Pick your tickets at SeatGeek.com, and at checkout, new customers can put in my promo code FARZINE and save $20 off their first order from SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com, pick your tickets, and at checkout, new customers can put in my promo code FARZINE and save $20 off their first purchase from SeatGeek. By the way, if you guys haven't done so already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I just commented with the link on there. I kind of started that last year, but didn't really do much with it. This year, I've been doing far more with it, and the subscribers for that have gradually gone up. All the other social media sites like Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, they're all doing really well, and I appreciate you guys. The growth on that has been ridiculous. There's been growth on all of them. The YouTube one has been kind of more quiet because it is still fairly new. So if you guys haven't done so already, please subscribe to that if you haven't done so. If you have already subscribed and you know someone that would be into that, into Chief more, maybe another Chiefs account on YouTube, send it their way. And that always helps the algorithm, all that stuff. When you guys like something, comment on something, share something, it really helps out a lot. And I know you guys have been doing that all year because the growth and the numbers have been insane all year. So thank you guys so much for doing all of that. All I ask is a little bit of help on that YouTube page. So I appreciate all of you guys who've been doing all of that this year. Teresa says the 12-team college playoff is a joke. I will say the college football playoffs this year, I was really excited for that this year because I think in the past, it used to just be the one game, right? No, there was no playoffs at one point. They've expanded over the years. I think 12 is a little too much. I think 8 is better. Listen, every year you're going to have people bitch and moan no matter who misses out. But the games this year have kind of been boring so far. Maybe they get better. Maybe not. I don't know. But I'd like to see them kind of. I hope the games get a little better. John says there are 4 pretenders in the AFC playoffs. Okay, well, let's just assume the Broncos are in. I think the 2 right away I can name would be the Texans and the Steelers. They just haven't played really good football lately. And I saw Teresa's comment about Tank Dell and his injury situation and whether he'll play again. I mean, that I just don't know. He did tear a lot of ligaments there. I mean, that is extremely. I mean, that I've never heard of a knee injury that bad before. So, best to him, and hopefully he'll be able to recover and come back to the field. If he's going to make a very difficult decision, then he's got to do that. I don't know who your two other teams are, John, but those are the two teams that right off the bat, I just don't know if they're going to go very far. I think there's a chance the Steelers and the Texans might even play each other. Those are the two pretenders I see on the AFC side. I don't know if I'd call the Broncos pretenders because they do have a rookie quarterback, but they do have the defense to make a deep run if they want to. That is the one thing I would fear with the Broncos in the playoffs. The Bills already had their Super Bowl beating us in the regular season. Yeah, they certainly did. Charlie's asking, who is everyone's MVP winner? Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, or Saquon Barkley? I'd like to see Saquon Barkley win it. I've been saying Saquon Barkley for a lot of the season. And listen, the guy just got 2,000 yards. Like, how can you dismiss that? Well, Lamar Jackson's having a really good season, and so is Josh Allen. Both Allen and Lamar, their numbers are really, really good. The best they've ever been for either player this year. Allen has done a really good job of taking better care of the football this year. That's been my biggest criticism of him. Here's the thing with the MVP race, and you can say this about the Heisman in college football, or for any MVP award every single year. There might be, some seasons where it's clear cut, very obvious who should win. Every year, you're going to have someone that should have won it, but the other guy was just simply better. The way I look at it with Allen, Jackson, and Barkley, all three are having tremendous MVP. Like, if these three guys did what they're doing this year on any other year, separate from one another, they probably win the MVP in those seasons. You're just seeing three really good performances the same year. So unfortunately, two very good performances will not be someone's going to get offensive. I think the way the voters are going to go about it, and remember there's 50 of them, they're going to give an MVP to one of them, and they'll try to give offensive player of the year to the one of the two that didn't win it, and then there's just going to be an odd man out. I'm seeing the back and forth between Bills fans and Ravens fans about the MVP argument. The discussion is at an all-time high with that one. I'll leave it at that. If I had a vote, let me just say it is tough. It is really, really tough. I do hate that it is a quarterback award. I think that's silly, but that's just the way, we kind of are with the media. And I think even fans play a role in that too. I would have to give it to Barkley, man. You just cannot dismiss 2,000 rushing yards. And I know they play a 17th game. Guys, I hear this a lot. Patrick Mahomes had this a couple of years ago where he broke the record for total yards in the season. And people are saying, oh, well, he had a 17th game to do it. Guys, we're getting 18 games soon. All the people who broke single season records in 16 games, they broke records from guys that previously had done it in 14 games or fewer. So the whole, argument about how, this person got a 17th game, guys, we're getting 18 games. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So a lot of the single season records we have seen over the years, they're all going to be broken when we get to 18 games. The single season sack record at 22, or 22 and a half, whatever it is, that's going to break once we get to 18 games. All the yardage, touchdown records in a single season, those are all going to break. There are so many things that are going to be broken. It's just we can't hold that against someone. The fact that Barkley has 2,000 rushing yards, and I think he's done a really good job of turning that Eagles team around. I really do. The Eagles certainly have impressed me this year. And I think all three of those guys have been great. But if I had to vote, I do agree with you, Charlie. I think it's Barkley. I've been saying Barkley all year, and I'll stick with it. Do I think he's going to win? No, I think the voters are going to go back and forth between Allen and Lamar. I think that's those are the two guys. What does Kelce need to do to pass Jerry in the playoffs all time? Let's look that up real quickly. I know he has the receptions record in a postseason. Yeah, he has 165. Jerry Rice has 151. When you surpass Jerry Rice in any kind of postseason record, dude, that is impossible to do. That is just really, really impossible to do. In terms of receiving yards, Kelce was second in all of these touchdowns, receptions, and yards. Kelce, he is a bit behind on the yardage here. Let's see, it's 19. He has 1903. Rice has 2245. He needs 341 receiving yards. I mean, Kelce hasn't had a lot of big receiving yardage numbers, so I think that might be out of reach. The touchdown number he might get. I do think Rice has 22 touchdowns. Yeah, Rice has 22 touchdowns. Kelce has 19. Gronk has 15. Stallworth has 12. Boy, Kelce. I mean, there's a big gap between him and Gronk. I don't think he's getting the yardage unless he plays one more year. The touchdowns, maybe. Like if he has another 2-touchdown game like he did last year against Buffalo, he's got a chance to at the very least tie Rice. Because otherwise he needs 4 to surpass him. So that he needs 341 receiving yards, or 342 rather, to pass him, and 4 touchdowns to pass him. So there's your answer there. You think the Chargers and the Broncos are the other two? The Chargers, okay, I mean, the Chargers, I can give you that. I still think that's a team that's kind of, figuring things out, especially after a terrible year last year. Harbaugh goes in there and is figuring that. Because, look, I think the Chargers, Broncos, and Chiefs, those are 3 teams that are all going to be playoff contenders for a very, very long time. It would not surprise me if we see at least 2 teams from the AFC West in the playoffs every year for the next 10 seasons, maybe, with the exception of maybe one where you only have one. I think in general, you're going to see a lot of AFC West teams in the playoffs for years to come. And that one team that won't be contending much would be the Raiders. I think it's funny, by the way, how they're winning 2 games in a row and their fans are angry. I upset some Raiders fans, by the way, because I made a graphic. I said that the Chiefs won 3 games in 11 days, whereas the Raiders have 3 wins all season. Now, this was before yesterday. Raiders fans were not very happy about that, but these are the same Raiders fans that are also angry about winning too. So Giants were fools to let Barkley go. Boy, that will never go away for the Giants. And I think part of it is because of the whole Hard Knocks thing. God. Listen, the criticism the Giants are getting about letting Barkley walk, it's kind of what Kansas City kind of got with Tyreek Hill up until, the game started happening. But there's also a difference. Like the Chiefs at least got something from Tyreek Hill. The Giants didn't. And he went straight to a rival. That will never go. That narrative is never going away for the Giants, unfortunately, until they start winning football games. What about Rookie of the Year? Okay, listen, I do think Jaden Daniels is going to win it. I think Bo Nix is having a really good season, hence why I think the Broncos, they're going to be contenders for a long time. But let me just get this out of the way right now. Because I love throwing digs at the Raiders. My Rookie of the Year is Brock Bowers. That guy has been consistently one of the league leaders in receptions and receiving yards. And by the way, he's doing it with a shitty group of quarterbacks in Vegas. Brock Bowers is going to be a problem for Kansas City and the other AFC West teams for years to come. Like the way it was difficult for teams to stop Tony Gonzalez and Travis Kelce, that's going to be Brock Bowers. Excuse me. That's going to be an issue for a lot of football teams. Brock Bowers is not easy to stop. In my opinion, he should be the rookie of the year. Didn't he just break the single season record for receptions for a rookie? Listen, Jaden Daniels having a phenomenal season. He keeps leading the Commanders to game-winning drives. I get that. Bo Nix has been playing great too. Just isn't finishing games like the way Daniels is, but I just can't write off Bowers and the fact that he's doing what he's doing with absolutely no quarterback play. When and if, big if, the Raiders do get a quarterback, Bowers is going to put up some record-breaking numbers. I really do think so. People thought Sam Laporta was on his way to like breaking all these tight end records, which I think is too early to tell. And I think it's too early to say that about Bowers now. But if I had to put money on it, I think Bowers is going to have a way better career than Sam Laporta. Laporta is a great tight end too, but I don't see it. I just don't. Bills fans last year said Lamar winning last year was a popularity contest. Look, isn't that what MVP ultimately is? I know everyone has their opinions about MVP and whether that's best player or is it most valuable. Because I think when people look at the words most valuable player, they think of, okay, take Lamar Jackson away from the Ravens, take Josh Allen away from the Bills, take Saquon Barkley away from the Eagles. And what are those football teams like? Okay, you could say that about a lot of, like, take Patrick Mahomes out of Kansas City, and I don't think Kansas City's as good. Now, I don't think Patrick Mahomes is an MVP candidate this year. I just don't. Look, I just think the award truly is the best player on one of the top teams. I mean, is that fair to say? I don't think that's a bad thing that it goes to the best player. It should go to the best player. And I know some people are going to push back and say, "Oh, but it's most valuable player, not best player." Okay, but so what is the point of MVP? I get it. It's not called the best player award, but it kind of doesn't it go to the best player every year? I think it should. It should go to the best player on one of the top tier teams. I do think the best player this year has been Joe Burrow, but they're 8-8. Now, if they find a way to win and finish above 500 and sneak into the playoffs, maybe Burrow has a case, but I think it's still an uphill battle, man. You got to win games. You got to win games. Like, when was the last time they gave MVP to a player on a team that was 8-8 or 8-9 or 9-8? You've never seen that before. You just haven't. Where did I get this at? Talon's asking. Just go search 2022 Kansas City Royals Independence Day hat. They've actually brought it back a couple of times. If you can't find it, just search for it again in June. Because they do re-release some of these over and over again. Yeah, this is my favorite. I love red, white, and blue theme type of sports apparel. I don't know. I just love it. I'll wear that stuff over a lot of like regular stuff any day. Listen, man, I love America. All right. America. So, yeah, I have another USA hat, not like this. It's a little different, but I just love USA apparel. But there's your answer, Talon. So if you can't find it now, look for it again in June. A lot of people are saying Saquon. Talon says Daniels for rookie of the year. Okay. Hopefully nobody breaks the 5,000 plus yards and 50 touchdowns that only Peyton and Mahomes had. Yeah, that is very difficult to do. Yeah, he only passed Jerry Rice for receptions in a postseason career. Yeah. But he's second in the other two categories, which, look, if you're second in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns all time in a postseason career out of everyone not named Jerry Rice, like, come on, you're good. The fans turned on Max Crosby over a video he posted. They want him gone. I have not seen that, but I'll take your word for it. No, I don't. Do I think Max Crosby is going to end up with the Chiefs? I've seen a lot of Chiefs fans put that out there. Bowers carry your fantasy football team. Well, that's good. The Chiefs are going to struggle keeping. I said Juwan Taylor. Trey Smith. It's going to be very difficult. And then in what 14 months, you got to think about keeping Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis. They're definitely going to consider the 5th-year option for sure. But boy, hey, listen, this is what happens when you've been drafting so well. Heard Rex Ryan and Ron Rivera are interviewing for the Jets head coaching job. Yeah, I just got a text from someone telling me that the Jets are interviewing Rex Ryan. I remember when the Chiefs fired Bob Sutton, I really, really, really wanted Rex Ryan. But they got someone better, obviously. Rex Ryan and Ron Rivera to the Jets. I mean, listen, both of those guys come with no bullshit. I have a hard time believing either one would want Aaron Rodgers to stick around. Like, Rodgers isn't having statistically a terrible season, though he looked like shit against the Bills. And to cap it all off, he got sacked, which, made him the most sacked player in NFL history. And on the next play or two, he threw a pick. And at the end of the play, I guess he hit the defender hard enough to draw an unnecessary roughness penalty. I have never seen that for a quarterback. Look, I don't have an issue with Aaron Rodgers and his stance on like the vaccine. I know a lot of people hold that against him. I know he's politically has had a lot to say. When he was like insinuating that people were on the Epstein list, that was uncalled for. I do think Aaron Rodgers plays like the victim card really hard sometimes. Like, oh, poor me, people bash me for the vaccine. Okay. I mean, listen, I don't care what your stance is on that kind of stuff, but if you're going to talk a lot, and listen, I don't think certain things are considered political, but the rest of the world does. But, from the rest of the world standpoint, if you're going to talk politically, then get ready for a lot of pushback. I know when Harrison Butker misses a field goal, a lot of people on the left, they love to bring it up, which I think is silly. I don't think Butker said anything outrageous. I think people just hear one small clip and they blow it out of proportion. Listen, Aaron Rodgers, if you listen to him outside of the political stuff, I do think Aaron Rodgers is a relatable guy. I actually like Aaron Rodgers. I know he's not everyone's favorite type of guy. He's not everyone's cup of tea. I get that. I did see his Netflix series, Enigma, which I thought was an interesting name. I was watching more for the spirituality side of things because I thought that was interesting. It wasn't as good of a documentary as I thought it would be. But I don't know, man. Like, I do think he is a relatable person. Now, listen, he made it clear in his documentary that he kind of goes through some weird shit with his family. Look, there are a lot of people who go through some shit with their families, but they don't make it public. Unfortunately for Aaron Rodgers, his family decided to make it public. I don't think he's a bad person. We don't know the backstory behind that. We just don't. In fact, I think it's messed up on his family's end to put that out there publicly. Because I've said this before, I've criticized Patrick Mahomes' mom because she's made it very clear that there's been family drama in the past. It's like, look, your son is a superstar, and the rest of your family, they all have a big following. If there's family drama, no one cares. Keep that to yourselves. No one wants that out there. I know there are some people, and when I say some people, I'm not talking celebrities. I'm just talking the average person. Like, I'm Facebook friends with some people who just put every single detail of their life online. I'm like, why? I don't know. Yeah, Bolton's going to be very difficult to keep, Charlie. I agree. Horn for America? Why not? Yeah, Bolton and if you find a way to keep Bolton and Trey Smith, I think you're going to have a very quiet free agency. I really do. I do think you can find a way to keep Hollywood Brown for a cheaper price, unless he goes off in the playoffs, like absolutely goes nuts. Then I think he's going to be easy to keep. Because I think Hollywood really seems to love the players he's working with, like Rice and Worthy. I don't like to judge people based off their social media, but Hollywood and Worthy and Rice, they love hyping one another up on social media. They still post pictures of the three of them together every single day in training camp. You would see the three of those guys walk together. And when Hollywood got hurt, it just looked weird not seeing him with the other two receivers. Then you add DeAndre Hopkins to the mix. And I think a big reason why DeAndre Hopkins even ended up in Kansas City is because Hollywood and Rice got hurt. If Hollywood and Rice never got hurt, I don't think you end up ever seeing DeAndre in Kansas City, but that's just the way it all worked out. I think DeAndre Hopkins realizes that he picked Tennessee over Kansas City for money. And listen, I'm not faulting him for that. Kansas City was in a bind with the salary cap because they were trying to figure out the Chris Jones stuff at the time. But I think DeAndre is realizing that maybe staying in Kansas City to finish his career and maybe even willing to take a discount is something he'd be willing to do. Because I've said for a while, and this didn't happen right away, but I've said that there are going to be players that will come to Kansas City and they're willing to turn down more money from other teams so they can play with Patrick Mahomes. Hollywood Brown said in the offseason that he was getting offered more money from other teams, but chose Kansas City because he wanted to play with Patrick Mahomes. So I think you can find a way to keep Hollywood Brown and DeAndre Hopkins. If you find a way to keep Hollywood Brown and DeAndre Hopkins, you're getting Xavier Worthy back because he's on a rookie deal. Rashee Rice is on a rookie deal. He's going to serve that suspension, but when he comes back, he'll be fresh and ready to go, and that'll give the offense another big boost. I'm excited to see what that offense could potentially look like. I think Juju is another guy too. Like, he went to Foxborough because of money, which I get. But then he kind of realizes what he missed out on. There's a reason why he chose to come back to Kansas City. I mean, I get it. Juju maybe wasn't the most sought after wide receiver once the Patriots let him go, but has Juju not been beneficial to Kansas City? I mean, he had that one big game against New Orleans. If he did not have that type of football game, I don't know what the outcome of that game would have looked like. Maybe the Chiefs still win. Maybe they don't. I don't know. But I'm just wondering what the offense could potentially look like if they can bring back those wide receivers. Yeah, Spags kind of got off to a bit of a slow start with the Chiefs, but boy, last year and this year, I think has really solidified him as the best defensive coordinator in NFL history. I really do. Did you call him arrogant, Rodgers? I mean, I don't disagree. Have I watched Squid Game, the new season? If so, what are my thoughts? I think I'm 4 or 5. I have no idea how many episodes I'm in. I'm actually enjoying this season better than last season. I don't want to give anything away. I really do like this. It kind of feels like, without giving away spoilers, it does feel like I'm watching an action film. Like that wasn't the case last year. This year kind of feels like that gangster type of film you're watching. I don't know. I like it this year better than last year or however many years ago season 1 was. Yeah, but here's the thing, Timothy. Everyone says restructure contracts, but those players have to agree to a restructure. I'll tell you right now, if I'm Juwan Taylor, I don't know if I would agree to take a pay cut. I know he restructured his deal, which is different than taking a pay cut. A restructure does not always mean taking a pay cut. Jawaan Taylor, the big part of his contract kicked in this year and will kick in again next year. So I have a difficult time believing that he would be he'd be willing to do any of that. I think the Chiefs would like to come to some sort of a settlement with him because he just has not lived up to expectations. And even then, that is very rare, and we don't see that often. But if there's anyone that could do it, Brett Veach could do it. Is Rashee Rice on the sidelines in games? Yes. I noticed in the Sunday night football game against the Chargers, Rice and Hollywood were right next to each other. They both had hoodies up. I don't think injured players travel. Like if you're like Chris Jones, I mean, he only missed one game, so he still traveled with the team. But if you're on IR like Rice, I don't think he traveled for the road games. I could be wrong, but I just haven't noticed him on the sidelines. He has been there for the home games, though. I mean, obviously in the beginning, like at the start, right when the injury happened, you take some time, you do what you got to do. But yeah, they eventually do come for the home games. Yes, Teresa. Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins with a full training camp. I said that about a lot of these guys too. I just think Kansas City would have a historic season offensively, and I predicted that this year too. But unfortunately, we had the injuries. Thankfully, you still have figured out how to survive even with all these injuries, and now you got everyone back. Offense is looking better, like we were talking about earlier. Yeah, he restructured, Eric. He did do that. I would love that, Teresa. Unfortunately, I don't. That is much easier said than done. We got to renew Mahomes soon, don't we? I mean, listen, the Chiefs, I feel like every year or every other year, the Chiefs have been doing something with the Patrick Mahomes contract. So he's always willing to do, excuse me, what needs to be done to help the Chiefs on that front. Comeback player of the year from Hunt, from the couch of the playoffs. I don't think so, Timothy. I do know that they've changed the criteria for the comeback player of the year award. I just don't think, like, regardless of their record, I just don't think anyone can beat Joe Burrow right now. I mean, Sam Darnold's having a very good season, but I think there's a big gap between him and Burrow when it comes to the comeback award. So, do the guys on IR draw full salary? That depends. It depends on their contract and what's guaranteed, what's not. So that ultimately depends on their contract situation. Isn't his contract coming up though, or when is it due? Who are you asking about, Kyle? Squid Game worth the watch? Yes, Squid Game is worth the watch. There's a show on Hulu. Guys, I just got to be honest. During football season, it is very difficult for me. I have a long list of like movies and TV shows. As soon as football season ends, I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, I miss football." Not me, man. When football season's over, I immediately try to knock off things on my list. There's a really good show that I've heard from other people on Hulu called Shogun. I've seen the trailer for it. It's got like this samurai, type of look. Dude, that shit is up my alley. Once the season ends for the Chiefs, I'm going to have a lot more time on my hands. That is a show that I'm definitely going to watch because I've heard a lot of good things about it. I still need to finish The Walking Dead. Because I've heard good things about the spin-off shows. And I guess in order to be able to watch those, you kind of have to finish The Walking Dead. And I kind of just fell out of that. You're talking about Mahomes? I mean, he signed a 10-year, well, technically it was a 12-year deal, but everyone is saying Shogun is great. Okay, I can't argue if we got the mass all agreeing on that one. Yeah, I mean, Mahomes signed a massive deal, so I mean, you might need to redo it, but they always figure it out every year converting it to a bonus like Timothy was mentioning earlier in the comments. Coach of the Year award. Listen, I think it's up in the air between Kevin O'Connell, him, as you said, Andy Reid. I just don't get look. I get Coach of the Year and what the criteria is for that. I mean, you hardly see Belichick and Reid get that award because they're always expected to be good. But you went through all these injuries this year offensively, and you still found a way to come through. I think Andy Reid should look. If I was a voter, Andy Reid's getting my vote. 100% getting my vote. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I do think it's going to end up being Kevin O'Connell because they're in a very tough division. Like, I know the AFC West is tough, but the NFC North is tougher. I mean, for crying out loud, the Vikings and the Lions are fighting for the number 1 seed next week. That's how tough it is. And the Packers are not too far behind them. How many years does he have left? Oh, let's take a quick look at that. If you guys go to the website SpotTrack, SPOTRAC, that is where they have all this information. There's also another website called Over the Cap. So 2024, he's under contract. 25, 26, 27. There's a potential out in 28. Things would have to go terribly wrong to even come down to that. He is under contract until 2031. And then 2032, it says UFA, which is unrestricted free agent, and it also says void. I'll be honest, I do not know what that means. But he's locked up through 2031. And by then, we will find out if the Chiefs are playing in Kansas or Missouri. Appreciate you, Mario. Yeah, I heard something about another robbery that took place. This is kind of weird. First, it was Kelsey and Mahomes, and it was like at the same night as like a Monday night game, and then Burrow had happened to him on the night of a Monday night game. I have a lot of questions, by the way, about their security. Like, how does that happen? I am getting hammered by the Buffalo Bills fans too. Yeah, those fan bases are pretty excited, and their team they're doing things they haven't done before. Yeah, Smith and Bolton. That's tough. And I agree with that too. That should be your first round pick. The problem is you're always picking 32nd or 31st, so you got to find a way to trade up if you really want someone. But listen, I mean, we've seen good players outside of the first round before, so. It's just a matter of Brett Veach and his scouting department, which they've done a great job of over the years. I know the big criticism on Veach is, he can't draft a wide receiver. Okay. I mean, Mecole Hardman wasn't terrible early on in his career. Rice, I mean, he was doing great until the injury. Worthy is getting better and better. I mean, I don't believe in that narrative that he can't draft a wide receiver. I just don't buy that. Here's a really good question, Caleb. Look, I'm a huge fan of Justin Reid. I think he's really, really underappreciated. Because keep in mind, like, you had Eric Berry, then you went from Eric Berry to Tyrann Mathieu, and then you went from Tyrann Mathieu to Justin Reid. Justin Reid is not as big of a name as those two. But I think he is just heavily underappreciated in Kansas City. I do think this is his last season with the Chiefs, especially with the way Jaden Hicks is playing lately. He is playing some really, really good football. And I know the Chiefs were in love with him when they got him. So, yeah, that's a really good question because Justin Reid's going to be in for a big contract wherever he goes. And I don't think Kansas City is going to be able to afford him. This is the tough part about dynasties is everyone wants to get paid. Because here's the thing. You have Harrison Butker. You made him the highest paid kicker. Okay. That's not going to cost you too much. But then you have Mahomes, and he's got a big contract. Travis Kelce just got a pay raise this offseason. Creed Humphrey just became the highest paid center. Chris Jones in March became the highest paid defensive tackle in NFL history. You can't make everyone the highest paid player at their position. You just can't. But those are great problems to have. We talked about that with Tim Grunhard on the podcast. Like, I don't know, man. That's something for Brett Veach to figure out. And he's done a good job with it. Look, we've learned already. You can't keep everyone. You traded Tyreek Hill. You traded L'Jarius Sneed. You let Willie Gay walk. Willie Gay was not like a massive fan favorite, but there were some question marks and concerns when he left. And I think the Chiefs have found a way to answer that very well with Leo Chenal. You're just not going to be able to keep everyone. I mean, listen, they went from Eric Berry to Tyrann Mathieu to Justin Reid, and they're winning still. Yeah, absolutely, Kyle. No, I enjoy the Q&As with you guys. I don't know, but Patrick Mahomes in the interview made it sound like it would be during the wild card weekend. Because he said in the interview, he promised to his wife that he would get the number 1 seed so they could kind of have a relaxing week, which is good. Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah, I think he's just so underrated, especially what he's doing now. Like special teams defense, the kickoffs. Like he's done a lot for Kansas City. He really has. Thank you, appreciate it. This is saw this. I'm like, I gotta get it. Old school. Joe Flacco for comeback player of the year in 2035. Man, I was pulling for the Colts so badly because I like Joe Flacco's story last year. I thought he was done playing football. I think he was done. He thought he was done playing football, and he's been given opportunities, and it's gone well for him. I was actually really surprised Cleveland did not retain him. I mean, I get it. They have Deshaun Watson at the time. They just recently redid it, but they were kind of stuck with him. But I think they're trying to move on from him now. I'll read a couple more and then I'll wrap things up here. I know this almost turned into a Red Friday live chat, which is fine by me because I haven't done a lot of podcasts lately because I was sick. So figured this would have been a great time to do a Q&A. Might as well. Yeah, and listen, the guy went to Stanford, didn't he? I mean, he's a really smart guy too. I'm Justin Reid, and I remember when the Chiefs were down 24-0 in the playoffs, and Tyreek Hill got blown up by the Texans defender. That was Justin Reid. I was just like, damn, that dude just totally destroyed Tyreek Hill in half. I've always been a big fan of his. I keep hearing Darnold as comeback player of the year, but it doesn't make sense to me. What is he coming back from? That's off to an incredible season, though. So I think the way the comeback player of the year award works is coming back from injury with Joe Burrow fits that narrative for sure. But I think if you didn't play well the previous season or if you're a journeyman in the NFL and you play well, I think that constitutes a vote for comeback player of the year. Because I agree with you. He's not coming back from anything. He's just been a journeyman. I mean, Sam Darnold wasn't he a first round or a second round pick? Like he was supposed to be good in the NFL. And he just went on this downward slope and was unable to recover from it. So I still think it's Burrow. I do think Darnold should be in the conversation, but I don't think it's a very long conversation. It's just I just think there's a big gap between 1 and 2 right now, regardless of what the Bengals record could be. I mean, you gotta give that to Burrow. I do. Yeah, I get this question a lot from people. I do. I'm self-employed. Multiple businesses, and I will leave it at that. I promise I am not like the wolf. I promise you guys that. Because I've gotten that question before. Came back from seeing ghosts in New York. I don't know what that means. Is that a New York Jets joke that I'm just missing? Yeah, I appreciate it, Enrique. Yeah, it was not a fun time of the year to get sick. That is for damn sure. And I hardly ever get sick. So whenever I do get sick, I'm just like pissed and upset. Ugh. What do I think the first round pick should be? I'm a very casual college football follower, so I don't know about the player, but it's got to be offensive tackle. 100% got to be offensive tackle. He was a first round pick. If you ask Collinsworth about Darnold, he thinks he's good. He's God. Oh, at first I read it as he's good. I was going to say, I mean, he's good this season. Andy Reid was talking about Carson Wentz today. And he talked about how Carson Wentz, he would like to have him back, but he thinks he's going to get a chance elsewhere. Sam Darnold's kind of like Alex Smith in 2012 when the 49ers were doing well with him, but then he got hurt and Kaepernick played and Kaepernick led him to a Super Bowl. So what do? Well, the 49ers decided to stick with Kaepernick and let Alex Smith go. I think Sam Darnold's kind of in that same mix where even though he's doing really well right now, they probably want to move forward with JJ McCarthy. That was the quarterback I was looking forward to seeing the most, and he got hurt. So I'm just looking at that right there. Darnold's obviously done really well this year to prove that he can be good in the NFL. And by the way, I love that clip of him going into the Vikings locker room and they were all just spraying him with water bottles, almost like it was a champagne celebration. Like, he deserved that moment for sure. That's a guy that's gone through a lot. There's been nothing easy about Sam Darnold's career. Like, you come into the NFL thinking that you're going to be a top dog in the league and at that quarterback position, but you're taken number 3 overall by the Jets. He basically became an NFL journeyman. I mean, what he's gone through from 2018 to 2020 was with the Jets, from 21 to 22 with the Panthers, 23 with the 49ers, this year with the Vikings. I mean, that is the definition of a journeyman in the NFL, especially for a guy with the number 3 pick. That cannot be ideal whatsoever. A lot of these guys that get drafted very high, especially at the quarterback position, their goal is to stay where they are long term and be able to have a house and have a family life, all that stuff. But that's never. I mean, listen, I'm not trying to do the whole poor Sam Darnold thing. I mean, he makes more money than the average person. It's still not an easy life to navigate and go through. So I think he's certainly done something to set himself up somewhere. Because didn't Nick Foles, and I know it didn't end up panning out well, but didn't Nick Foles get a 4-year, $88 million deal from the Jaguars? I know he didn't finish that contract or even come close to finishing it, but he made a lot of money from that. That's Super Bowl MVP. And then winning a playoff year the year after that with the Eagles, that helped him set himself up. And he's obviously retired now. So assuming he's smart with his money financially, he's probably set up for quite some time. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here. Hour and a half, more than an hour and a half. Been a long time since I've done a podcast or a live stream that long. I appreciate you guys, though. Reminder, later this week, because of the New Year's, we're going to kind of shift the schedule around a little bit. We are going to do an episode of Farscast this week. That's been, we were going to do a Christmas episode, but again, I was under the weather, so we were unable to do that. But Melody's going to join me and Eddie's going to join me. Eddie Law, he's done some podcasts with me. We're basically going to talk some holiday recap, New Year's. We're also going to recap the Chiefsaholic documentary. If you haven't seen this, and I don't want to give anything away because there were some things that I learned that I never had seen before. But if you want, check that out on Prime. It's actually a really, really good documentary. Some things on there might upset you or make you just think the world is weird. I'll leave it at that because, again, I don't want to spoil anything. But it's a great story. It's a really good story, in fact. So check it out because we are recapping it on Farscast later this week. I think we're going to do it on what's tomorrow? New Year's Eve? And then Wednesday is January 1st. So yeah, I think we're going to do it January the 2nd. I think Wednesday, January the 1st, Wednesday night is when we will do the Chiefs Zone. We'll break down the game between the Chiefs and Broncos. We don't really need to wait for later in the week because, I mean, listen, it's kind of a preseason game for the Chiefs. So there isn't really too much to talk about from Kansas City's end. So we'll do that. We'll do the Chiefs Zone on Wednesday and Farscast will be on Thursday. So make sure you guys look out for that. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Share the links on Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, all these places. It really helps out. So I appreciate all of you guys who've been doing that and continue to do that. Hope the holiday season has treated all of you guys very well. Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and I hope you guys all have a safe and happy New Year. I'm Farzin Vousoughian. Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. I will talk to you all later. Take care.